Good evening, Andrew Wyatt. I have to say, you're the first YouTuber I've ever met that really forced me to use every ounce of my speed reading and memory skills to come up with any kind of an argument that could actually refute what you said. Okay. Now, this will have to be a two-part presentation because the information is very extensive. This is the first time I've had to come up with extensive information to prove my point. That's a big deal. So congratulations. You did a mighty fine job of putting me to the test. And did I pass the test? Well, we'll find out. Lots of notes. So this is not going to be a short video in any way, shape, or form. The nice thing about you is you actually do listen to the whole presentation and you consider every single thing I'm saying before you make a response, which is kind of nice. I don't get that from very many YouTubers, but you do that and I have to give you credit for that. Now, the first thing I will say, and I have to give you some concessions here. Concession number one, yes, legally, you really could grow marijuana without any soil whatsoever. That's a fact. You can do that. We have the technology to do that. I have to concede that one to you. But to get good quality marijuana, you have to grow it in nutrient-rich soil. You're absolutely correct in saying that you can grow marijuana anywhere. You can grow it in the jungle land of South America. You can grow it in Africa. You can actually grow that stuff in the desert Southwest. You can grow that stuff there. But to get a good quality product, you have to have it in nutrient-rich soil. Okay? And this is true of corn, of soybeans, of wheat, anything. To get the good quality, you have to grow it in nutrient-rich soil. Where is that nutrient-rich soil in the United States? Well, it's in the Midwest. Okay? So, now, in order to make the solid case, we have to start taking a trip down the yellow brick road. Why do we have to go down the yellow brick road? Well, because there's a lot of concepts here that have to be brought up in order to come up with a decent argument. And this is not going to be very easy. Okay, so let's begin with the flower children of the 1960s. These are the people that popularized the use of marijuana. Marijuana's been around for a long, long time. But these people made the use of marijuana popular. It's just that simple. Okay? They were your flower children. They got into nature. They loved the environment. A lot of them later in life became environmentalists. And some of them even worked for the EPA. Okay? So their philosophy is Mother Earth. Now, how would I know all this? Because I grew up in the 1970s and I met a lot of these people. Some of them I was fond of, some of them I wasn't so fond of. It just depended on who they were and what they thought. So, but they weren't especially bad people. They were pretty nice, actually. Nicer than a lot of people I meet today. Sometimes I wish more people were like those hippies. Being a hippie wasn't so bad. Some of their philosophies were, but they weren't necessarily bad people. So, there was things you could learn from a hippie. Really, honestly. Learn how to relax, learn how to enjoy life, how to appreciate nature. Yes, you can learn a lot from a hippie. You don't want to learn everything, but you can learn a lot. Okay? So, these peace-loving hippies, who are now our environmentalists, are very well aware of things that can destroy the ozone layer and of carcinogens. They are well aware of this as well. So, when telling them these pieces of information, they would take this under consideration. One of the things that they take under consideration is the ethanol problem. Okay? A lot of them at first embraced ethanol until they got to the idea of it might starve us to death. Then they weren't so fond of it. Okay? Because they don't want anybody to starve. That's their philosophy. Make sure everybody gets the same amount of stuff. So certainly they don't want anybody to starve. which is one thing I can agree on with them. I don't want anybody to starve either. So, let's see what the chairman of Nestle Foods had to say about biofuels. I would try to pronounce his name, but I have tried to do so. It is horrible. I won't even say it because I just don't have the talent to say it. So, what was said was, in a nutshell, he said that biofuel production is absolute madness. And he backs it up. Alright. Right now in the Midwest, we have 40 million acres devoted to ethanol production. That means we have planted switchgrass and we have planted corn, which are the two primary crops that we use for biofuels. This has made the farmers very rich. Bear with me. It's getting a little cold. Anyway, let's go on. Alright, now, for those of you who do not know what 40 million acres is, let me define that for you. Alright, you know how they have those yardsticks? Well, a yardstick has 3 feet in it. And you say, well, what's 3 feet? Well, if you have a ruler, and I don't know I have one, of course I don't have one available to me, but if you had a ruler, one ruler, 12 inches, is a foot. You have 3 of those rulers, you have a yard. Okay? Now, if you have 4,840 of these yards in a square, you would have 1 acre. Okay? Now, that's slightly larger, and I mean ever so slightly larger, than what you would find in an American football field. Now, if you can imagine 40 million football fields put together end per end, you would have the size of how much biofuel crops we are growing on a regular basis in the United States today. Now then, if you were to decide to plant marijuana in all of this area, then that means less biofuel. Now here's the problem with biofuel. The problem is that they use switchgrass as well as corn. Now corn and switchgrass are feeds for farm animals. Uh-oh. So, if you're using the feed for the farm animals to fuel your car, what are the farm animals supposed to eat? And that's caused quite a controversy. Okay. So now, you're proposing planting cannabis in place of the biofuel, which has already taken the place of the feed that needs to go to the animals. Now we got a problem. Now, can this problem be corrected? Probably so. But it will have to be addressed if you're ever going to legalize marijuana. Because the farmers are going to want to make the maximum profit. And even if marijuana is legalized, it is still going to be a premium crop. And they're going to make a killing off of it. They're already making a killing off of ethanol. Now they're going to want this. See what I mean? So that is the first problem that has to be addressed. But let's go one step further. There are other problems with this as well. And yes, I can guarantee you these hippies would address these issues before they'd ever legalize marijuana. Issue number 2. Marijuana contains carcinogens. These hippies know this. Okay? They know that marijuana contains ammonia, arsenic, benzene, carbon monoxide, lead, and nitrogen oxide. Now let's focus on carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxide together. These 2 chemicals have been found to destroy the ozone layer. And the more of it goes in the atmosphere, the more the ozone layer gets depleted. These hippies know this. Okay? Matter of fact, they call these chlorofluorocarbons. And it is destroying our ozone. Now, I know the environmentalists, they all say, well, the cows burping do that too. Well, they're trying to fix that too. Not sure how they're going to keep the cows from burping, but hey, go right ahead. But they know that tobacco smoke and marijuana smoke into the atmosphere causes this damage. They know this. And what they have come up with so far is the electronic cigarette. Now you can have your nicotine fix and not pollute the environment. And I'm sure if we have marijuana, what they'll do is they'll come up with an electronic cigarette for that too. And then you won't be polluting the environment while you're enjoying your marijuana. But that is a problem. And it will have to be addressed before any marijuana is legalized. That's a fact. But it gets worse. Let's go back to the ethanol. Okay? We already have this problem, but it will get worse if we start planting marijuana. And this will also have to be addressed. They're addressing it right now because of the ethanol. Alright. Have you heard of the low oxygen dead zone on the Louisiana shelf? Okay? Now this is in the Gulf of Mexico. The organisms that live on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico are dying because of oxygen deprivation. You say, well, what's causing this oxygen deprivation? Well, when you're dealing with crops in the Midwest, we use things like nitrogen and phosphorus for fertilizer. Now, when that nitrogen and phosphorus runs off the crops, they run into the rivers and streams and whatnot, which eventually run into the Mississippi River, which in turn goes down the Gulf, goes into the Gulf of Mexico, and kills this life. Now, when that life gets killed, then the fish start dying. When the fish start dying, the animals that consume the fish also start dying because they're being starved. See what I mean? Starts a chain reaction, and that impacts the food chain. Well, the environmentalists are not going to stand for this either. So they're going to have to find some way to fertilize the marijuana without creating this low oxygen dead zone. So that's the third problem. Okay? So, those are three good reasons not to legalize marijuana right now, because we do not have good solutions for all three of these problems. Now, I'm sure eventually these environmentalists, these hippie people, these flower children will come up with solutions to all three. And when they do, it might be more feasible to plant marijuana. But we certainly do not want our ozone layer depleted because of this. We certainly don't want aquatic life being destroyed by all this. And we certainly don't want us to be ingesting carcinogens that are going to kill us. So legalizing marijuana is not such a simple issue. Now you say, well, what about the other argument that you presented? Well, I'll have to present that in a different video because it's a little more complicated too. It's not just a simple solution, but I think you can see three very prevalent problems that will have to be solved by environmentalists before we ever plant one crop of marijuana. And yes, that can cause a food shortage, especially if we end up with either a drought or a flood. Either one can cause a terrible calamity for all of us. Shoot, the ethanol's already creating this calamity. You plant marijuana to go along with it, that's a problem. Okay? You're exacerbating a problem. We already have the problem, now you're making it worse. So it's not so simple to legalize marijuana. Right? That's a lot of information for you to ingest. Now, if you got solutions to any of this stuff, hey, fine. Now, the thing is, I want you to understand that if people are using marijuana in their homes without affecting the environment, if they're not affecting the environment, they're using their homes, fine, go ahead. But I think these problems should be addressed first, don't you? I think so. Now, as for the other argument I gave Again, I will have to give you a more comprehensive answer. I have not had the time to come up with a good answer for that as well. I'm sure I will. I will leave you a link to the low oxygen dead zone down here in the comments below. I'd love for you to read it. I also did find a website, and I forgot where it was, but I found a website that tells you what's actually in marijuana smoke. And hopefully you'll find that as well, and you'll research that as well. Definitely research how nitrogen oxide and carbon monoxide affects the ozone layer. And I know there's been some articles that says, well, marijuana smoke is friendly to the ozone. Well, if you're pumping carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxide into the atmosphere, that's not so friendly. So, but like I said, I know that these flower children have come up with these electronic cigarettes, and that's probably one way that they will finally be able to ingest the marijuana without affecting anybody else. So, yeah, I'm sure these hippie people come up with solutions to all of this stuff. Maybe you've got some solutions, I don't know. But yes, these are definite problems. You don't just go and legalize marijuana, not without covering this. So yes, I do tend to have a valid point on this one. I'd love to see what you have to say about all this. I will tell you more in a future video. Stay tuned.